Everyone. Welcome to our Google Hangout on air. It's so great to have you here. I want to welcome you to this very unique chat we're going to be having today on giving you some ideas about how to really go on a private retreat for yourself and how to reboot, recharge, and reconnect, and kind of explore really what that means. I'm so delighted to have this chance to be with you today. And before we get started, I want to thank you and really applaud you on the great karma that brought you here, because it's not an accident that you were brought to this video today. And so I hope you will continue to water those seeds of karma that have ripened, that have allowed you to arrive here, and that you hear something that can be useful to you and perhaps to others in your life. So welcome. So my name is Felina Danalis, and I am a coach, and my purpose in having this video today that I'm so excited that you're here to join is to share with you some things that I think really might help make your life better. And that's really about the joy and the wisdom of retreat, and how it can really be a powerful practice to help us reboot, recharge, and reconnect. And during today's talk, I'm going to unpack for you what that means and how it can really help you have a more fulfilling and joyful life. And before getting into that, I want to tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to introduce my colleague as well so you can get to meet her. And then we'll launch right into what I hope will be some useful information for you about how to go on retreat. So I began my career in international development many years ago, and I was living in Washington, and I worked at the World Bank, and I had a really interesting career in international development, and I traveled around the world and did very interesting and intellectually stimulating work. And I eventually ended up moving to Europe, and I was an advisor in the Greek Foreign Ministry on economic development issues. And then some time later, I was invited to go to Serbia after some of the after the conflicts there, and I did reconstruction there. And so it was in the early 2000s, and in many ways, my life really looked golden. I was doing really important work. I had a lot of prestige professionally, and I was helping people, or so I thought. And one day, something changed, and that whole edifice of my life kind of evaporated. And that was that I saw somebody who was killed in a car bomb. And this whole life that I had built around doing this interesting work and having this great job and looking really good on the outside, it kind of crumbled. And what happened for me was that I had this breaking open moment that so many people have had, and maybe you've had as well. And in that breaking open moment, I had what people sometimes call a nervous breakdown. Sometimes they call it a spiritual breaking open point. But what happened was I realized that I didn't really like the person who I was becoming. And on the outside, it looked great. But on the inside, I'd really lost my way. And that experience really led to a massive shift and transformation in my life. And I went on this journey, like so many of us have done, and to find who and what I was supposed to be doing here, and how I could tap into that deep impulse for service, but to do it in a more embodied and compassionate way. And so I went on this journey of healing and spiritual growth and deep personal transformation and learning that really took my life to a new direction. And so to fast forward all of that information of more than a past decade, and so since then I have been working with people as a coach and a meditation teacher to really teach people how to let go of that false self, that self that everybody thinks is so amazing and wonderful, but that sometimes isn't very fulfilling or authentic, and really go for the most fulfilling lives possible. And so I'm so excited to share with you this idea of how to go on retreat and the wisdom of retreat today. And in that context, I want to introduce to you somebody who I met along my journeys and my travels and my explorations, somebody who is a partner and a fellow coach and a teacher and is a certified yoga instructor. And most of all, she's a great light in the world. And so I'd love to introduce you to my friend and colleague, Susie Rice. Susie, we'd love to hear a few minutes about your story, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. Hello. Thank you for being here with us. It's a pleasure. I am Susie Rice, and I am a certified health coach, a certified yoga instructor, and have also become a clinical social worker in the past several years. But most of all, I am an advocate of personal well-being and taking care of yourself. And so this journey of mine started a little bit earlier in my career. It's kind of been an intuitively spiritual development that has taken shape over the course of starting yoga at 16, playing competitive soccer, moving to New York City immediately after college to attend clinical social work school, and wanting to travel in between, but knowing that I was going to be in New York City and kind of needed to be mindful of my budget. I ended up at the Mega Institute at 21, volunteering service and really being for the first time cracked open and exposed to meditation and mindfulness and all of these different kinds of yoga outside of the gymnasium. And this really led me to catapult into appreciating and taking advantage of everything there is in the Mecca of New York City, and doing my first training right after I finished my schooling for clinical social work. I worked a year, was working with urban young adults, teaching them to follow their passions and reach their goals despite all obstacles, and recognized I hadn't fulfilled mine. So this took me on a journey of leaving New York City with my partner and traveling Asia for I think about 6 months before ending up in Australia. So from 2011 to 2015, I traveled to over 21 countries, found myself on 6 continents. I didn't make it to Antarctica, maybe one day. So I definitely took my understanding of yoga and spirituality and meditation and all types of culture and people to Australia, where I began working as a yoga teacher and health coach, and working to kind of create my own legacy before moving to Richmond, Virginia, where I live currently, and I'm a health coach and yoga teacher. So I'm delighted to share with Felina in this endeavor of Reboot, Reconnect, and Recharge, and to share with you on this journey of what it means to take care of ourselves and be the light that we're meant to be in the world.
That's fantastic, Susie. You really are a light in the world, and it's such a privilege and joy to see you bringing forth greater joy and wellness into the community that you serve. And that's really part of what I'm hoping that we'll talk about a little bit too, is in this notion of, as we go on retreat and as we reboot and recharge and reconnect, we're more able to more skillfully and compassionately serve those around us, particularly those who don't have the same privileges that we have. But not only. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today is this whole idea that I've played with for past 15 years, which is reboot, recharge, reconnect. And the idea kind of came to me one day when over a period of time when I was having computer difficulties. Now, I don't know if you're like me, but I am one of those people that when the computer isn't working properly, like I don't really know how to respond to it. But one of the things I've learned though is that 2 things help when the computer is slow or when it's not working well. One is to turn it off, and one is to unplug it. And so this idea kind of came to me. And what's interesting is when you do that, you notice that the parts that weren't working when you magically reboot it start working. I don't know why. Again, I don't have a tech background. I have a background and I have a master's in international economics, but not in technology. But what happens is I've noticed that when you turn it off and you unplug, somehow the computer starts working better. So not only do the parts that weren't working work better, but the parts that were working well to begin with, like if you're working in Word or something, that continues to work well. And so I really reflected on this, on what a powerful metaphor that can be for our lives. And that is when we have a difficulty, so often, whether it's a personal difficulty, a professional difficulty, whatever our challenge is, so often our culture teaches us to lean in and to push onto and to fix things. And what this computer analogy really reminded me of, this whole notion that also is in Buddhism and is in many spiritual practices, which is about giving things space and taking a step back and rebooting, really, if you will. And so I've really loved this powerful metaphor of when something isn't working well in our lives, rather than pushing down on it, we have an opportunity to lean back and to give it some air so that it can breathe. And so by rebooting, you find that somehow the computer works. Well, when you reboot your own self and your own experience, oftentimes we'll find that you work a little bit better. And so naturally, I think most of us, I love it, Susie, I just saw you taking a deep breath, and that really reminds me of one of the most powerful ways that we reboot our central nervous system at any given moment is by taking a deep breath, right? By doing that, you are disconnecting from your mind a little bit and you're getting regrounded again in your body. And so I really want to introduce this idea of rebooting to you. And what is a great and practical way of doing that at home is just to take a deep and conscious breath. You can do that at the office. You can do that when you're taking a walk. You can do that when you're doing a live video. What's even more powerful, though, is if you can reboot by giving yourself a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes. So one of the greatest practices that I introduce to my meditation students and my coaching clients and people that I work with on retreats is this notion of taking these small pauses during the day. So one of the great ones is when you're in your car, before you come into the house, for example, if you drive to work. I live in Southern California where everybody drives everywhere. so there's a lot of driving involved here. But to the idea of coming in, before you come into your house, of spending 2 minutes or 5 minutes in your car with your eyes closed, with the engine off, obviously, and really allowing yourself a chance to reboot before you go home, so that you can calm down your central nervous system, you can let go of a little bit of the stuff from the day, and that when you go inside, you're kind of refreshed. You're able to greet your dog or your family or whoever is in your house with a refreshed kind of attitude in that space of leaning back and giving air to the experience. So often we think that that doing more is going to solve our problems, when the reality is doing less for most of us is really helpful. And this brings me to this whole notion of recharging. So once you've rebooted, you kind of unplug a little bit. And you can do that for 5 minutes. And some people go on retreats that are week-long retreats. And we'll tell you a little bit about the one that we're going to be doing a little bit later. But a great practice to reboot is just those 5 minutes. Once you've taken that break, though, and you've calmed and you've given yourself some air, it's really powerful to think about what can you do next to recharge yourself. What can you do to nourish your spirit? What can you do to nourish that part of you? Now, I wrote a blog post a while ago about the wisdom of retreat, and you'll see that in the link below. And one of the things that I talked about in that post was about yin and yang. And this is something, Susie, I know you know very well from your yoga practice. And that's really this notion that we have in the West, which is all about being in our yang energy of doing things. And what I want to introduce is how important it is to, when we recharge, to allow ourselves to be a little bit in the yin of life and a little bit in that more receptive, passive, even feminine energy, which is the receptive side of the moon. And so some of the things that can help us recharge are things like journaling, or going for a walk in nature, or eating a great organic meal with friends, or a yoga practice, for example. Susie, I'd love to hear from you, for example. What are some of the benefits you've seen that people have in their lives recharging with yoga?
Yeah, so I think one thing to remember is yoga is really about, well, yoga means union, right? So yoga is about connecting with your deeper self, not the self that you want to share yourself with the world, but the self that's more internal, that when you do shut down from whatever is tangible in your life, and you do dig in and just close your eyes or go inwards, you're connecting with that more deeper truth, deeper sense of self that provides more energy than when we think up here. So when we're moving in, we're thinking more like heart, thinking more third eye, And I know that might not make a lot of sense to you who maybe have never stepped on a mat, but I tell you, if you practice 1 or 2 times, you start to feel that, because it's just finding a balance internally, and we forget that we balance ourselves inside versus thinking we're balancing our lives by making these decisions of what we're putting in our agenda or balancing friends with work or yada yada. I also want to just say, before we kind of delve into the benefits of recharging with yoga, Hatha yoga is kind of standard. All yoga is Hatha or Hatha, and it just means sun and moon. So like yin and yang, the sun and the moon obviously makes the day go by, and that leads us to the next day. But it also is part of our physical makeup. So the sun is going to be that yang, that masculine energy that drives us to do something. And the moon, the lunar, is going to be that more yin, more feminine, and both have a place in our practice, and both are really important to helping us establish that balance. So when you're practicing yoga, I think we get confused a little bit sometimes that it has to be a physical practice, and the physical practice is so amazing, especially for us Westerners, because we're so used to moving that it's really difficult to slow down sometimes. Like taking that first step and saying, okay, take a deep breath, that's difficult enough. Then you might be sitting in the desk all day, you might have never stretched, maybe you're an active spinner or runner, and thinking about your hip flexors sounds like hell, let's be honest. So I think just reminding yourself that it's finding a balance and establishing a practice is so much more than whatever the result is that your body does or does not do. Just stepping on your mat, entering that yoga room or space in your house, or practicing with someone online really offers an opportunity for you to let go, or at least begin to try to let go of all of that stuff. And maybe, if it's not letting go, it's just becoming aware of the thoughts that we often push away because we feel guilty or bad or one way or another about feeling something about all of the thoughts. So again, I think that union, being mindful of connection, becoming aware, and then once you have the information, then you can start moving to the next step of like, what do I do with that information? What behavioral changes can I make? What is working for me? What is not working for me? What do I want to let go of? What's really, energizing me and filling me up? Because some of the stuff that's going on is really great and exciting, and we want to think about it. But when we're on our mat thinking about yoga, it's just time for us to be with ourselves, not with our phones, not with our colleagues, not pushing ourselves harder, but sometimes doing the opposite of what we think we need to recreate that balance in our life that provides us more energy and fuel when we move to the next thing.
Yeah, I love that, Susie. That's so powerful. And I just feel that energetically, like how transformative it is to be in yoga when we are not on the mat. And that's what's so wonderful about this conversation that we're having, is really talking about integrating that yoga isn't just the asana, isn't just the postures. It's really a way of being in the world and of yoking to your innermost self. And that's really the piece that I wanted to talk about next, is once we have recharged with the things that really bring us joy. And so maybe that's doing some yoga for you, or maybe that's going for a walk in nature. What you'll find is, as you're building a life where you're including more of these things that recharge you, sometimes they'll lead you off into directions that you weren't really planning on going in. And one of the things that I have seen in my clients again and again and again is they go on to take really interesting projects, for example, or to take the yoga class, and then there isn't enough time to do the other things. Or you finally get the really fulfilling romantic partner that you've always wanted in your life, and then you're wondering, where have I gone in this? Where am I in my life? And you kind of lose yourself. And that's why the next part that I think is so powerful about this whole idea of going on retreat is to reconnect with your authentic self. And you talked about it a few moments ago, Susie. It's that deepest part of who and what we really are. And what I've noticed is that the more out in the world that we are, the more we are being of service to others, the more we are out and engaging in our work and in our families, in our schools, in our communities, the more important it is to reconnect with our authentic self. And that authentic self very often can be boiled down to, some people think of it as as the God within. Some people think of it as a higher power. Some people use the language Buddha mind. I tend to use all of them. But one of the things that I think is really powerful to also to connect with as we're reconnecting with our authentic selves is the little kiddo that you were when you were 5 years old. So I've recently been going through old family photos, and I keep noticing pictures of myself as a little girl. And I remember that sense of wonder that I had. So do you remember, maybe you had this experience, but I remember being a little girl and going to visit my grandparents in Greece and looking at the sky and looking up at the stars and just being in a state of wonder about the world and what does it all mean and where is my place and who am I? And that sense of childlike wonder that is really that magic that we're all looking for. I came across a copy of The Little Prince recently once again, and I know that that's a favorite book for so many of us because we all recognize that child quality of wonder is lurking in there, and we want to cultivate that. And so by reconnecting, by spending some time through a variety of practices to kind of connect with that authentic little kiddo who's inside of you, can really lead to more joy into your life, so that no matter how many people you are connected to in your life, you stay connected to you. Time and time and time again, I hear from my clients. I work with clients all over the world who are everything from stay-at-home moms to software engineers, attorneys to doctors. And again, one of the themes that I hear people talking about is, I'm out in the world and I'm doing all these things, but I'm losing myself in the process. And so this idea of keeping it in the back of your mind, of finding practices that help you connect to that authentic self, that little kiddo that was there, that was looking up to the stars, is so vital. Because here's the deal. When you can connect authentically to your own spirit, to your own God self, to your own Buddha mind, to your own inner child, whatever language resonates most for you. But it's that quality that when you look up at the stars, or when you looked up when you were a child at the stars, you knew you were a part of the entire universe, and that was magical. When you connect to that part in yourself, it's more available to you to connect to that part to other people. So, and this is really important because more and more of us are in this hyper-connected world. And what we're really looking for is connection. We all want to be connected, right? We all have our, we all have our little devices, and we're all online all the time, and we're all hungry for authentic connection. And all of the connectivity in the world, all of the likes, all of the shares in the world don't do anything to meet that need for authentic connection. And the only way we can have those kinds of authentic, meaningful connections in our lives, either through our work or at home or at school or wherever we move in the world, is by first being connected with our own self. And so that's why I'm so excited about this idea of reconnecting and spending time to find those rituals that help you connect with your authentic self. And it's different for everybody. Father's Day was last weekend. And one of the things that I noticed that my little inner child was craving was a chance to watch cartoons. I remembered watching cartoons as a kid with my father, and it was such a wonderful experience. And that was my way of celebrating that inner child and of really reconnecting to that authentic sense of wonder. Some people might think cartoons might be silly, but I find it deeply empowering, because when you nourish that part of yourself, that childlike part of yourself, joyfully and with honor and with dignity, you can go back out into the world and you've got a full cup to serve others. You've filled up your cup, and now you can go and fill the cup up of your husband or your boyfriend or your wife or your kids or your colleagues or all those people who are in your life who want some of your time, right? So many people talk about, I'm just so overwhelmed digitally. I get so many text messages and I get so many emails, and I'm constantly bombarded. And that really tells me is my question always is, how are you practicing connecting with your authentic self? And so one of the great practices and ways of doing that is by going on a digital detox. I know it sounds radical, but hear me out on this. Sometimes even just a few hours, or a few hours if you can, even starting with 1 hour. I have a client who's a CFO of a company who has struggled with letting go of her device. And she has found that even letting go of her phone for an hour a day has radically increased her productivity and her sense of calm and fulfillment in her own life, because she's spending that time instead reconnecting with her own self. And that's such a powerful practice. And so one of the reasons I invite you to consider this idea of digital detox is because research has shown again and again and again that when we're constantly multitasking, we're not able to be as efficient as we would like to be. Our central nervous system can't handle what we call multitasking, the constant texting, the constant emails, right? We all think we can do it and we all try to juggle it at times, but we know what the cost is. The cost is high. The cost is we can't sleep at night. The cost is we're overwhelmed. The cost is we avoid people because we never replied to their email message. And it happens to all of us, right? So what I want to introduce you to the idea is of really thinking about the wisdom of going on retreat. I'm just kind of playing with this idea. And you can go on a retreat in a variety of different ways. One way you can go on retreat is by practicing reboot, recharge, reconnect during your day. So I live in Palm Springs, California. That's where I am right now. And it has been, on Monday it was 124 or 25 degrees here. It's over 110 every day. And I wasn't really feeling well this morning when I knew we were going to be videoing today's call. And I was given an opportunity to really practice. How can I reboot, recharge, and reconnect? And so I spent a little bit longer in my morning meditation rebooting. And then I went for a long walk. And in the heat, yes, it was in the heat, but it was still beautiful and it was helping me reconnect to my body. And the recharging was really remembering, kind of coming back to the gratitude and the fullness of what an amazing opportunity we have to be alive. And we have to be embodied and incarnate and healthy. And so by going through that process quickly, I was able to go through the rest of my day in a kind of sane way and be able to get to our call tonight. So that's a way you can go on a mini retreat, if you will, during your day and use this reboot, recharge, and reconnect in your day. Sometimes if the stuff is a little bit more challenging in your life, it's really helpful to consider doing a little bigger detox, and maybe you could do a weekend. So one of the practices I have encouraged my clients to try is to see what happens if you go on a digital detox from social media for 24 hours or for a weekend. That's a pretty radical one for a lot of people, and I know that can be very threatening. I used to work at a treatment center, a very prestigious treatment center for alcohol and drug abuse here in Southern California. And what was so astonishing to me was that when people would come in, one of the most difficult things that they had in terms of leaving behind their lives for 30 days or 90 days was letting go of their cell phones. It's very, very difficult for us because we're very attached to that constant feedback and to that kind of adrenaline rush that we get from texts and messages. So sometimes if you're really burnt out and you're in a very challenged space, going on a retreat for a whole weekend is a great thing. But other times, let's face it, a weekend is just not enough. Other times you're maybe suffering from adrenal fatigue, or you're struggling in your marriage and you've been together a few years and you have had some pretty serious conflicts and you don't know if you'll make it. Or perhaps you've been wanting to lose weight for a really, really long time and it's never manifested it for you yet. In these cases, sometimes it can be so helpful to take a longer retreat. And that's why I'm so excited that Susie and I are going to be presenting the Reboot, Recharge, Reconnect retreat in Greece at the beginning of September this year. This is going to be an amazing opportunity to really kind of go into a deep dive of what we've been talking about today, and of rebooting, recharging, and reconnecting. So I've kind of given you a little taste of some of what we're going to be doing on that retreat. But imagine this, it'll be 7 days in a sustainable organic olive farm where Susie will be leading morning meditation and yoga every day. We'll have quiet time each day for you to have a chance to either do some journaling, do some meditation practices. If you've never had a meditation practice, maybe you'll have an opportunity to try some. In addition to that, we'll have 30 hours of group coaching. So imagine this, every day you will be in a small community of like-minded individuals where you will get to focus on really rebooting the parts of your life that aren't working. So letting go of some of that stuff that's not working and celebrating the stuff that is working. That's one of the aspects that we'll get to do in our group coaching. We'll also have a chance each day to have a mindfulness practice, because that's a powerful way that we have found of reconnecting with our authentic self. And there's so many different mindfulness practices. I've been a student of John Kabat-Zinn's and his mindfulness-based stress reduction for many years, in addition to other forms of meditation. And what's so great about it is that there are a variety of ways that you can try that. And so on our retreat, each day we'll have a new meditation practice and a new mindfulness practice, so that you can try a walking meditation, you can try hanging out on the labyrinth, or you can do a silent meditation. Whatever it is, you're going to have a chance on this retreat, if you choose to join us, to really explore the benefits of meditation. Now, one of the things that's really powerful about getting clarity about what your goals are is that you start thinking about yourself and your identity in a new way. And a lot of times people go to workshops and talks and they just get a lot of information kind of crammed in your head. I don't know if you're like me. I've been a lifelong learner and I've had many of those experiences. And then you go home and you're like, uh-oh, what do I do now? So in this retreat, we have specifically built in lots of time for you to integrate your learning. And that's such an important practice, and it's such an important part of what we're hoping to do. Susie, as our retreat coordinator and yoga instructor, I was wondering if you would talk for a few minutes about the importance of integration and why it's so important for us.
Sure. So integration, just taking what you've learned and putting it into practice, is going to help you so much on taking whatever you experience on retreat and things that you love back into your life without feeling like, how do I get started, or what's the first step? Because even if you go really deep, when you have all the time in these 7 days to yourself, away maybe from your phone and from your computer and responsibilities, you know, sometimes even starting back at the beginning when you get home is the simplest way to really get the benefit of all the work that you put in on retreat. So thinking about a yoga class, if you've taken one or if you're new, we always lay in Shavasana or corpse pose at the end of our practice. And ultimately, it's because that's the most important part. That is the integrative process of saying, okay, I connected with my breath. I practiced some pranayama, breathing. I am taking in all of the physical benefits, all of the parasympathetic benefits, all of the reducing stress, and just really feeling nourished for a moment, disconnecting from what do I need to do next. So similarly, in this retreat, the coaching, the yoga, the meditation, there's time in your day to take it, to sit with the information you're getting, and to kind of figure out, is this going to be something I take with me back into my life? And I can tell you, like Felina, I've done many different yoga trainings and certifications. I've done a 10-day Vipassana retreat at a Buddhist monastery in Thailand. I have a lot of wisdom and I have a lot of tools in my tool belt, but I can tell you that being in real life with all the information I have, sometimes it's really easy to forget how to take that first step and put it into practice. So the more that you start to build a habit in these 7 days and really feel like this is the one thing I'm going to start incorporating into my life, and then slowly start building, right? Because it's not a race, not a sprint. It's a lifelong marathon of how do we really get the bang for our buck and the work we're investing in ourselves, so that we have this quality of life that feels really nourishing, and we're connected to this self that is ultimately inspired and not just feeling run down, running on a treadmill every day. So I think ultimately you have a lot of resources here and a lot of opportunity to practice so that you can come home feeling re-energized, feeling inspired, that all of these things come back to you in your life.
Yeah. What's so great about that too, Susie, is like you really got to the point of being nourished. And that really leads us to another point that's really important. So much of going on retreat is about cultivating and developing practices that are sustainable. And that's why I'm so excited that the retreat that we're doing this September, which you can find out about at felinadanalis.com, is on a sustainable olive farm in southern Greece. And it's really important that that's a sustainable farm, because not only will you be eating 3 gorgeous, organic, locally sourced, farm-to-table meals. And who doesn't love Greek food? I know I'm a little bit biased, but I've been there and the food is absolutely amazing. But what's really powerful about being on a sustainable farm is that it really drives home this idea of my personal practice needs to be sustainable. So really what that means is, it's great to go on a master cleanse if you can. It's great to do, to do some extreme form of, boot camp or something like that. Those can be wonderful practices. But what I have seen for people again and again and again, and my own observation of my own life and my own transformation has been that the small sustainable practices that we can incorporate into our lives each day are the ones that are going to help us build the most fulfilling lives. So it's really exciting that we're going to be on a sustainable farm. And what's great about that is not only is the farm a sustainable, locally sourcing organic farm, but one of the things that I'm so excited about is that we will also have opportunity to do service projects on the farm if we like. So if you'd like to farm, if you'd like to get your hands in the tomatoes, if you want to do something like that, you'll have a chance to do that, so that when we leave the space, we've left it in better condition than when we found it. I know sustainability and being healthy is so important to so many of our viewers, and it certainly is one of my highest values. And so it's really important to have these opportunities to share our practice, right? So as we do our own personal work, we get to be in service. One of my mentors, Marianne Williamson, very frequently talks about how what's personal is also political, and wherever you stand on those notions, there's a very powerful stance of being actively embodied in having your small sustainable actions that you do for your own life connecting to the planet as well. And so on this trip, on this retreat as well, in addition to having these service opportunities, you're also going to have a chance to do 2 things which are awesome. One is to do activities, the other is to do nothing. Now, hear me out on this. Now, I know a lot of you like to stay busy, and how often do you get to go to Greece, and how often do you get to be on vacation for a week? And so there will be marvelous opportunities on this retreat to go hiking in the local mountains, to go swimming in the Laconic Gulf, which is nearby, and also to do activities that we'll have on the farm. If you look at felinadanalis.com, the entire retreat schedule is laid out for you there. So you'll see each day what you'll be doing on retreat with us. But some of the activities can include having a Greek cooking class, for example, on your free time, or learning how to make jams or marmalades, or getting some Greek recipes that you can bring home with you to incorporate more healthy and healthful living with you, in addition to amazing olive oil that there's there, by the way. So these are some of the activities for those of you who really like to keep busy and want to really make the most of that experience. And for those of you who just want to rest, hear me out. I created this retreat because it's the retreat that I want to be on. It's the retreat that I want to go on. It's the retreat that I have been working on for years. In fact, I helped write the business plan of the retreat center that we're going to be going to about 10 years ago. And I always had this kind of vision inside of my heart of bringing a retreat like this here. And one of the great things about having this opportunity to be on a retreat for a full 7 days is that you have a chance to practice the most radical act that somebody can take, and that is to be still.
So Felina, I'm wondering if someone's interested in hearing more about the retreat, and if it's something that would fit their goals, how would they figure that out?
That's such a great question, Susie. Thank you so much for asking. So one of the things that I'm so excited about is that our retreat is really designed for people who really want to reconnect with their authentic self and really want to recharge. And each person who applies to the retreat will get a full-length coaching consultation with me. So when you go to felinadanalis.com and you fill out the application there, we will schedule an individual coaching consultation to make sure that it's the right fit for you. Maybe you have some health conditions and mobility is a challenge for you. We'll have a chance to talk about that. Or perhaps you have small children and you're wondering if you're going to be able to be in touch with them. These are all kinds of questions that we'll have a chance to explore during the consultation to make sure that this retreat is the right fit for you. Because this retreat isn't for everyone. If you want to constantly be busy and you want to push yourself and you want to force yourself, this is not the retreat for you. If, however, you want to really allow yourself to reconnect with that sense of wonder that you had as a child and really recharge and get out of the overwhelm and to be on this digital detox for just a few days, we will find that out in the individual consultation. And if it's the right fit, we'll invite you to participate. But this is something I really want to be clear. I want you to get the value of this idea of rebooting, recharging, reconnect. And if you want to be on the retreat, that's great. If you want to tell somebody about it, that's great too. But most importantly, I want you to hear what we're saying in today's video, which is you deserve the opportunity to explore the wisdom of retreat, and you deserve the opportunity to really reconnect with that authentic sense of wonder you had. So if you're interested in finding out more, I encourage you to please go to felinadanalis.com, submit the application that's there, and we will reach out to you. Susie will be the retreat coordinator on our retreat, and we'll make sure all of your logistical questions are answered about airport transfers and how you're going to get to the retreat site. Everything else that you could ever want to know is located on the website as well. And if you want to find out more, you can also send me an email to Felina at felinadanalis.com. It's been such a pleasure and an honor to have this time with you today. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you soon. Be well.